Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where today I am going to answer the question, is the Wiesel ruining Era 3? I put this question out to you guys roughly a week ago, and after 513 votes, 60% said yes and 40% said no. Now, 513 votes is a very small percentage of the overall player base for World of Tanks console, and it is likely that the majority of those votes came from my subscribers. This vote, as a result of those two bits of information, this vote is not representative of the entire player base, so that must be taken into account when we talk about these results or we decide to base anything off of these results. The 60% that said yes, the Wiesel does ruin the game, or it does ruin Era 3, sorry. I read a comment not that long ago, fairly recently, that I think adequately sums up how this 60% feel. The Destroyer writes, "To anyone that says just play the BMP3 or Bradley, if we all did that to show off the Wiesel, then what's the point in literally every other tank in Era 3? Just a few days ago, before the Wiesel was added, I earned myself a Challenger 1. In those few days, it did everything I wanted it to. I could have some excellent gameplay against enemy tanks, but now I daren't play it because of the invisible Mach 3 toddlers running around with missile launchers firing credit cards at me that eat a third of my health before pissing off for the next minute while a second micro brat appears up my ass because it just drove past my entire team without anyone seeing it. And even if they did, it's that small and agile, it's a nightmare to hit the bugger in the first place, hoping you just don't bounce off its missile launcher that I have done too many times. It's the Armadillo of Era 3, but even worse, because the Armadillo had to have constant line of sight to deal damage over a period of time. The Wiesel drives within 50 meters without being detected, shits out 1400 damage, and has already scampered halfway to Mexico by the time you've had your tank turned around. To say I despise it is an understatement." Well, there you go. I personally think that the assessment of the Wiesel there is accurate from a target perspective. I would disagree slightly with the Armadillo comparison, but we can circle back to that a little later on if necessary. As of this upload, the Wiesel was released a little under 2 weeks ago. Since its release, I have seen games go from having 6 on each team to what I'm seeing now, where I see 1 or 2 on each team, sometimes only 1 in a game. Klaus Kellerman had this to say fairly recently in one of his videos. "These tanks come out in their novelty, they're all the rage, and all the videos come out about how they're going to break the game and everything. Then some time goes by, and then, you know, you barely ever see them anymore." I have found this to be evident with the Wiesel, and like I've just said, I'm seeing a max of maybe 2 on each team, and in all honesty, the TD I'm seeing a lot more of now is the Thumper. But that can be explained fairly simply by the fact that people are completing the season. I'm seeing maybe 4 or 5 Thumpers on each team at the moment, but I still think that the words of Klaus are true. Time will go by, and even the Thumper will be seen in reduced numbers as the days, as the weeks, as the months go by. Even the Thumper will be seen in reduced numbers. Now, I'm saying all of this as background context. I'm also saying it as a call to the hotheads out there, maybe just to calm down a little bit. You know, let's all cool off slightly. It's been an interesting few weeks for the game. There's no doubt about that. But I do think there needs to be an element of calm and calm and collected thought here. Give it time, and the ripple in the lake that was caused by the Wiesel being thrown in will settle. The issue, however, is not so much the Wiesel, but it is the number of Wiesels a team is allocated. This is something that Destroyer mentioned in his comment. Taking one hit is expected. Taking two in a row is game ending. And I personally think that is where the issue with the Wiesel lies. Its strength is not in its ability to play solo. I have had many a game in the Wiesel in which I am the last alive and I cannot do a damn thing. I'm spotted, my smoke is on its cooldown with 72 seconds to go, I've got a Leopard 2A5 on my tail, and I just can't escape because you can't run away in the Wiesel. And that's where I think the comparison to the Armadillo is slightly inaccurate, I would say, because in the Armadillo could run away and then just come back around and take you out. The Wiesel can't do that. It's the Armadillo was absolutely overpowered when it was released, and that's why they nerfed it. I don't think the Wiesel is quite at that level. However, you can get into situations where it is ridiculously good, but you can also get into situations where it is helpless. It can't do anything to help itself. You can get three of these things working as a group, and if they do that, they can end a Challenger 2's game in a matter of seconds. You can go from full health to nothing in the blink of an eye. Now, this isn't to say that a solo Wiesel is useless. I mean, I've had 2 games now in the Wiesel where I won a 1 versus 5 situation. So, you know, the Wiesel can carry, it can do that. But I'd like to think that that is down to player skill, player positioning on the map, rather than the vehicle itself just being blatantly overpowered. So yes, a Wiesel can carry games on its own. But that is true for most tanks, I would say. In the right situation, most tanks have the capacity and the ability to carry 1 versus 5s. I think the problem with the Wiesel is its magnified power in numbers. Too many working together make the game utterly miserable for anybody who is opposing them, because like Destroyer said, they are small and they are very difficult to hit, especially if your hit just hits the missile launcher. That isn't a hit, but that isn't part of the vehicle hitbox. So if you hit the launcher, it's just going to bounce, which I suspect is happening quite a lot whenever you fire a shot at a Wiesel and it bounces. I suspect that your shot is coming into contact with the launcher, which is incredibly frustrating. The hardest thing to deal with in Era 3 is the fact that 3 marking, let alone 4 marking, is a monumental challenge on its own. What with the uncontrolled map rotations and team player allocation. Adding the Wiesel to the mix has made a tough job even tougher. Era 3 now requires all players hoping to do well to be extra vigilant when it comes to map awareness and enemy team vehicle awareness. Not to mention the fact that now that this thing is invisible, you have to pay attention to the map, you have to pay attention to your own vehicle, and you need to pay attention to the local environment, because it's far more likely you will see the Wiesel coming at you before it is spotted by the in-game spotting mechanics. The Wiesel in numbers has made Era 3 a very, very tough place to enjoy. Now, I'm not privy to the data that Wargaming has on the Wiesel. I honestly have no idea what the win rate of this vehicle is overall. But if I were to comment directly to Wargaming on what I feel needs to be done about the Wiesel, I would say the following. The Wiesel is essentially a limited turret traverse pre-concealment nerf light tank. Wargaming, you fix that problem by increasing all light tank concealment factors. Now I believe you need to do one of these 2 things. Apply the same concealment balancing to the Wiesel, or limit the number of weasels in platoons and on teams. The weasel is good, there's no denying it, but as the old saying goes, you can have too much of a good thing. Okay folks, that's all I have for this one. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, if not a dislike. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and as always, I hope you're all keeping well, and I will see you out there.